The bullet is still there. Not in a museum archive, not sealed behind glass. Right now, in the silver sleeve of Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn, a jagged, dark tear in hammered metal, bent inward and never straightened, sitting exactly where it landed on a morning in 1702. You can stand close enough to see the edges, the way the silver puckered under impact, the way the goldsmith's delicate floral engravings run right up to the hole and stop. 3 centuries of candle smoke have darkened the opening. Thousands of pilgrims have stood where you are standing. Nobody filled it in, not because they couldn't, because they decided not to. That is already strange. But here is the stranger part. The soldier who fired that shot did not survive to see the following morning. Neither did the 3 men standing beside him, and the only record anyone left of what happened is that jagged hole in silver and 4 names nobody remembers. We will get to that. For now, notice what surrounds the damage. An entire silver garment. Hammered leaves and vines and blossoms, the work of weeks, maybe months, framing a face that remains completely still. The oak beneath is 400 years old. The expression above the bullet hole has not changed. There is a certain kind of image that follows a person, not because it is beautiful, because something about it refuses to settle. Something about it sits at the edge of explanation and stays there. Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn is that kind of image. And if you've ever stood in front of a closed door, holding something too heavy to carry and too private to explain, you may already know why. It is April 1702. The Great Northern War has been grinding through Eastern Europe for 2 years, and a Protestant Swedish army is moving through Vilnius. They are not searching for treasure. They are not in a hurry. They move through the gate the way an army moves through a place it is already decided belongs to it. Slowly, with the particular confidence of men who have stopped expecting resistance. The gate is narrow. The icon hangs above the inner arch. Someone in the column looks up. What happens next is documented. What it felt like to be standing in that archway, watching a soldier raise his weapon toward a painting, that no record can give us. But we can say what the people nearby would have heard. Not the shot. Not yet. First, the footsteps on wet cobblestone. The low jangle of equipment. The city holding its breath in the way cities do when something irreversible is about to happen. Then the shot. The bullet strikes the silver sleeve at the icon's right arm. The metal folds inward. It does not pierce the oak beneath. It stops inside the dress. The column keeps moving. What happens next morning cannot be fully explained. The city gates, the enormous iron-hinged wooden doors set into the archway beneath the icon, violently separate from their mountings. The sound would have been enormous. Iron shrieking against stone, timber giving way. 4 soldiers are underneath when the doors fall. 2 die within the hour. 2 more before the day ends. The bullet stays in the sleeve. Nobody touches it. Nobody straightens the puckered metal, or seals the hole, or commissions a repair. In the years that follow, the local goldsmiths continue their work, adding new engravings, extending the floral motifs, hammering new sections of the silver dress. They work around the hole. They leave it exactly as it is. That is the fact. What it means is not our job to decide. Move back 60 years. Move into a smaller, more private terror. It is 1671. A 2-year-old child falls from a second-story window. The research gives us no names. We have only what monk Hilarion recorded 90 years later. A document of 11 words describing what happened, and then 12 words describing what came next. Everything in between we have to reconstruct from the physics of the moment. A second-story window in 17th century Vilnius sits approximately 4 meters above granite cobblestone. A 2-year-old child weighs perhaps 12 kilograms. The sound of the impact would have carried down the alley. The parents, and the record says parents, plural, meaning both of them were there, reached the child on the street. The body is not moving. There is blood on the stone. What a parent's hands do in that moment, the particular quality of the silence that descends when a human being is looking at something they are not equipped to survive. Hilarion does not describe this. He didn't need to. Every person who has ever stood in a hospital corridor at the wrong hour already knows. What the record does say. The parents brought the child to the chapel at the Gate of Dawn. They stayed. They prayed through the night. The chapel at this point is a rough wooden structure, recently built, smelling of pine resin and candle grease and the street below. Cold comes up through the floorboards. The candles gut and flatten in the draft from the archway. In the morning, the child was fully restored. That is what the record says. Hilarion lists this as the first miracle he could verify by name. He does not explain it. He does not try. And here is the thread that runs through both of those moments. Neither the parents in 1671 nor the city in 1702 received what they asked for. The parents did not ask for a night of waiting in the dark on cold floorboards. The defenders of Vilnius did not ask for a musket fired at their most sacred image. They asked for protection, for the thing they loved to be kept safe. What arrived instead was something that looked, at first, almost exactly like the opposite. Which brings us to the paradox at the center of everything. It is 1795. The Russian Empire has finally, formally, absorbed Vilnius into its territory. The decision is made. The medieval defensive walls, the entire ring of stone and tower that define the city's edge, 9 gates in all, will be demolished. Systematically, stone by stone, over the following decade, until nothing of the old boundary remains. The workers start at the far end of the perimeter. They work methodically. Gate after gate comes down. The city watches its own outline disappear. By 1805, when the project is complete, the wall is entirely gone. The rubble has been cleared. Vilnius no longer has a defensive perimeter. It has an open field where one used to be. 8 of the 9 gates are gone. One is still standing. Not because the workers ran out of time, not because the gate was structurally complex. The Gate of Dawn remains because the Russian administration, which had every reason to erase a symbol of Lithuanian-Polish identity, which would later ban the local language spoken in front of this very icon, which viewed a painting of a woman on an oak board as a genuine political threat, left this one gate untouched. No official explanation exists. The gate stands today in the center of Vilnius, alone, with no wall attached to either side. An arch in the open air, a door in a frame with no walls around it. And above the arch, still, the silver dress, the crossed hands, the face that has watched wars and demolitions, and the slow return of peace, and has not changed its expression through any of it. In 1824, a poet named Adam Mickiewicz was banished from Vilnius by the Russian authorities. Before he left, he prayed at the Gate of Dawn. He asked to come home. He never did. He spent the rest of his life in exile, Paris, Rome, Constantinople, and died of cholera far from everything he loved, never once crossing back into the city where he had stood and asked for exactly this one thing. But in exile, he wrote an epic poem that opens with the words of a prayer to Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn. That poem, read in secret, copied by hand, passed between people who had no country left, kept the Polish and Lithuanian cultural identity alive through 123 years of statelessness. The miracle he asked for was denied. The miracle he didn't ask for outlasted everything. There is something unusual about this image that takes a moment to register. She has no child. Almost every famous Marian icon in the world shows her holding something: an infant, a scepter, a lily, a globe. Here, her arms are simply crossed over her chest. Her head is bowed slightly. She is alone in the frame. No one is looking up at her. No one is reaching for her hand. Art historians connect this to 2 specific moments. The instant after the Annunciation, when Mary has just been told she is carrying a secret that will cost her everything, and nobody yet believes her. And the moment at the foot of the cross, when the cost has been paid in full, and she is standing in the aftermath. Both of those moments share one quality. The weight is invisible. You cannot see it from the outside. You are carrying something enormous, and the people around you are going about their day. The walls around her are covered, floor to ceiling, in over 8,000 silver and gold objects hammered into the shapes of human hearts, arms, legs, and eyes. Each one left by a person who came here carrying something they couldn't show anyone else. The cumulative smell of that room across 4 centuries. Frankincense, melted wax, wet wool from winter coats, and underneath all of it, faintly, the street, because the chapel sits directly over a working road and has always been open to the noise of the city below. This is not a place removed from ordinary life. It was built into the middle of it. In April 1935, a theology professor named Mikhail Sopochko stood at the high window of this chapel and made a decision that could have ended his career. He had been listening for months to a dying, uneducated nun named Faustina, who described visions that had not been approved by anyone, that sounded to most of his colleagues like the fever dreams of a sick woman. He commissioned a painting based on her descriptions. He hung it from the window, on hemp ropes, next to the Gate of Dawn icon, over the heads of thousands of Easter pilgrims. He was a university professor. He had a reputation to lose. He was not certain. He chose anyway. That painting, which most of the world now recognizes as the Divine Mercy image, was seen in public for the first time in that window, next to the bullet hole, next to the mother with no child, over the noise of a working street. So here's the question the icon seems to hold for anyone willing to stay with it long enough. What if the thing you are carrying, the weight that has no name, the loss you can't explain to anyone, the prayer that came back empty, what if that is not the end of the story, but the exact place where a different kind of story becomes possible? Not a better story, not a neat one, but one that outlasts the rubble. October 1978. Karol Wojtyła has been Pope for approximately 6 hours. The weight of what has just happened to him is not abstract. He is 60 years old. He is from a country under Soviet occupation. He has just been handed responsibility for a church of 1 billion people, at the height of the Cold War, in a building he has never slept in, wearing a white cassock tailored for a smaller man, in a city that is not his home, with a press corps outside the doors, and an entire world waiting to form its first opinion of him. He does not call a meeting. He does not make a phone call. He goes down into the Vatican grottos, the underground crypts that run beneath the floor of St. Peter's Basilica, and he kneels in the dark before a mosaic replica of Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn. Someone had it installed there, knowing the new pope was from the East, knowing what this image meant to the people he came from. He stays for a long time. No official record describes how long. None describes what he said, or whether he said anything at all. What the historical record gives us is a single documented fact. In the first hours of the most consequential role of his life, this was where he went. Not to a strategy session, not to a mirror. Into the ground, into the dark, to kneel before an image of a woman with her arms crossed and her head bowed, carrying something enormous that none of the people around her could see. He visited the Gate of Dawn in Vilnius in person 15 years later, in 1993. The Soviet occupation had ended. He prayed the rosary in the chapel above the arch. The street below was open. People stood in it and wept. He never explained what he had been looking for in that underground room in 1978. He didn't need to. Some things don't require an explanation to be real. People come to this image when the weight they are carrying has no name anyone else would recognize, when what is pressing on them is not dramatic enough to call a crisis, not resolved enough to call gratitude, just present and heavy and entirely their own. The Chapel of Our Lady of the Gate of Dawn, Aušros in Lithuanian, Ostra Brama in Polish, sits directly above the last standing medieval gate in Vilnius, Lithuania. It is open throughout the year. Every November, a 9-day novena is held in the chapel, drawing people from across Eastern Europe and far beyond. Many of them descendants of exiles who carried this image in memory for generations, when the physical gate itself was behind a border they could not cross. You can stand on the street beneath the arch and look up at the window. The city moves around you. Trams pass. Someone is carrying groceries. The window is above all of it, exactly where it has been for 400 years. There is one detail from the beginning of this story worth returning to. Not to repeat it, but to see it differently. The goldsmiths left the bullet hole open. They worked for months, perhaps years, extending the silver dress outward, hammering new petals, new borders, new vines across the panels. They came within centimeters of the damage. Then they put their tools down and moved on. The dress is not pretending the shot didn't happen. The icon is not presenting a version of itself from before the damage. What you see, when you look at the sleeve, is the full record. The craft and the wound, side by side, neither one erasing the other. 400 years of people have been coming to stand in front of that. Not, perhaps, because they expected the damage to be undone, but because they needed to see what it looks like when something absorbs the damage and remains. Still crossed, still bowed, still here. Before you go, one question for the comments, and I mean it as a genuine question, not a prompt. Is there something you have been trying to fix or erase in yourself, in your life, in your story, that might be more honest and more useful, left visible? If something here stayed with you, subscribe. There are more of these stories about sacred images, the people who stood before them at the worst moments of their lives, and what they carried away.